back to my channel and another tutorial. I'm very excited to be doing my first needle and anchor tutorial. Thank you, Carissa, for allowing me to do tutorials on your patterns. Today I would like to show you, and we are going to make this together, is the Driftwood handbag. I did the handbag version. There are instructions for a crossbody version, but I just did the handbag version this time. Let me show you some of the awesome things about this bag. So it's got these hidden connectors, and they're a little different than how I usually do my hidden connectors, where there are no raw edges. She uses facings to do this. So I show you how that is done. It's got these awesome kind of peekaboo accents on the sides. Yeah, and on the inside it's got a zipper pocket, and then it's got four slip pockets, 2 pen slip pockets and 2 larger slip pockets. And really, there wasn't anything that was overly hard about this bag. Interfacing wise, what did I use? Decovil Lite, Decovil Heavy, and medium woven interfacing. I used SF101. If you guys need a Canadian supplier for those, look down in my description to my website. I do sell all of that on my website. My hardware is Emmeline bags, except for my zipper and zipper pull are Blue Cala. My vinyls, this is the metallics line of Emmeline bags, the Rex Metallics. It's called, this gray is called Athros, I don't know. It's the gray metallics and then the pink metallics. I can't pronounce what it's called. But yeah, and my lining I just got at Fabricland. Yeah, so without further ado, again, thank you, Carissa, for allowing me to do tutorials on your patterns. And I do have a link to the pattern down in the description below, so go ahead and grab your copy and let's get sewing. Okay, what we are going to need for this bag, you're going to need number 5 zipper tape. I am using Zipper by the Yard. 3 number 5 zipper pulls. 4 1-inch rectangular rings. I'm doing the rectangular ring option, not the O-ring option. 6 purse feet, these are optional. And 2 zipper ends. Minimal hardware. And also you will need some medium rivets. You're going to need 2 exterior pieces for your zipper panel and 2 lining pieces backed with a medium woven interfacing. I am using SF101 by Pellon. You're going to need 4 exterior panels cut mirror to each other, so 2 on one and 2 mirror to the other side. All 4 backed with Decovil Lite, centered. You're going to need your base piece and to fuse a piece of Decovil Heavy centered on the back, or you could use Peltex. You're going to need 4 hidden strap connectors, all backed with a strip of Decovil Lite down the center. Your zipper overlay, your handle pieces, your 2 exterior handle pieces and your 2 contrast pieces for your handles. Two contrast side pieces. Your slip pocket lining for your slip pocket and your exterior piece for your slip pocket. And your pieces for your zipper pocket. All these were backed with the SF101 medium woven interfacing. And your 2 lining main panels also backed with a medium woven interfacing SF101. And your 4 hidden connector facings, these are not backed with any kind of interfacing. And last but not least, your 2 pieces for your side contrast facing. These are backed with medium woven interfacing as well. Okay, so now you're going to take your 4 hidden strap connector pieces. You're going to draw a line down the middle, 1 inch up, which is halfway across. And then you're going to take some double-sided tape. I get my double-sided tape from cleanersupply.ca if you need a Canadian resource. And I'm going to put tape along each of the long ends. And then we are going to fold each of those long sides into that center line. Now we are going to take this to the machine and we're going to do some very simple decorative stitching. And all that means is we're going to do like we regularly would do with the 1/8 of an inch top stitch down each side, but then we're going to go back in and do a 1/4 of an inch top stitch, and you're going to do that with all 4 of your pieces. So this is what it looks like. So you can see how just simply adding an extra line just gives it a little bit extra pizzazz there. I also went ahead and installed my purse feet. I do have a class on how to do that. I will put that down in the description below if you do not know how to do that, and I always back my prongs with duct tape. Now we're going to move to these incredibly awesome double-sided straps. So I went ahead and did one to practice doing it because this is my first time making this bag. So what you want to do is take your 2 strap pieces and you want to put them right sides together. With the short ends, you're going to clip them and do the opposite side as well. We're forming a loop. Also make sure you can see here that I did a center line on all of my pieces. So now we're going to take this to the machine and sew each of those short ends with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So as I just mentioned, before I sewed them together, I had went and put a center line at 1 inch on both pieces. Okay, now we're going to take our double-sided tape. We use lots of double-sided tape in this pattern. And you're going to put them small strips on that seam on each side that we just sewn. And this is going to help hold that seam open to reduce the bulk when we do the top stitching on this. So take that seam wrong sides together and just open it up and flatten it out. And do the exact same with the other side. And flatten that one out too. Okay, and then we're going to go back in with the double-sided tape and we are going to put it along the long sides of the loop on the wrong sides. So just take your tape and work your way all the way around the loop like this. I'm going to put this into little bit faster motion just so we're not here forever while I put this tape on. And then do the same with the other side. Now, if you didn't want to use double-sided tape, you could also use a glue stick to do this. Okay, and now what we're going to do is working from each side and working along. You're going to pull back the double-sided tape paper part way like so, and then fold that long edge into that center line. When you get to the seam, make sure your seam lines up nicely. So you're going to have a nice straight continuous line there. And then pull back your double tape and keep working your way around. And do the same with the other long side. Again, matching up that seam to make sure we have a nice continuous seam line there. Okay, now once that's all done, you're going to notice that your exterior piece, of course, is longer. That is what we want. So when we fold it straight out, actually first I'm going to take some thicker double-sided tape, and on the contrast piece right along the raw edge there, I'm just going to put some down the middle. Now you can secure this with clips if you want. Again, I am a double-sided tape lover, so I'm just going to go ahead and use double-sided tape. Okay, now when you pull this loop flat and wrong sides together, we're going to be making a straight piece here. So you want where we folded the seams on, we're going to enclose them in the center. Now you're going to notice that how my pieces here, my exterior, the gray piece, they overlap by about 3/4 of an inch, which is what we want. So then I'm going to slowly pull away part of my paper from my double-sided tape and then press these to get wrong sides together nice and even. Just making sure I'm still about 3/4 of an inch because I want them to be pretty centered. This is just such a pretty way to do a strap. I really, really do like this double-sided strap with the 2 vinyls. And this vinyl is the Metallics Rex vinyl line from Pellon bags, if you need to know. This was the dark gray and the pink. I don't remember what they're called. So then we're going to go ahead and we are going to top stitch this again with 1/8 of an inch and then go around again at 1/4 of an inch to make it look all fancy spancy. Okay, so this is what our straps look like. Once they're all done, you can put those aside for now. Now we're going to work on our zipper panels. So you're going to need your 2 exterior zipper panel pieces and your 2 lining ones. We want to find the centers of each of these. So the way I do this is I fold them in half and I just do small clips within a seam allowance to mark my centers. You can also do this with a pen. So I'm going to show you one panel and then I'll do the other panel off camera. So find the center of your lining and your exterior piece. And then what we're going to do is on the wrong side of each of these pieces, we are going to mark a line 1 inch in from the short end. I have never ever done a zipper panel this way. It is ingenious. It just makes for a perfect zipper panel, and I believe I probably will do it this way going forward. It's just such an awesome technique, and you'll see why. It's just it's foolproof for making our pieces very even. Okay, and then you want to find the center of your zipper. So I've already put my zipper pulls on my 26-inch zipper, so I know 26 divided by 2 is 13. So I'm just going to measure to 13 inches, and with my erasable pencil, I'm just going to mark that 13-inch mark to mark my centers of my zipper on both sides. Okay, then we're going to take our lining piece, and on the right side, 1 inch end from each end, we are going to put a piece of double-sided tape. So I'm actually just going, we have it marked on one side, the 1 inch, but it's not on this side. So I'm just going to use my table and start my tape 1 inch in from this short end on the right side of the lining piece to 1 inch in on the opposite side. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take our lining piece right side up and our zipper right side up, and we are going to match our center. So these little lines with the little notch that we made marking the center of our lining piece, and we are just going to stick them on. Again, you can use clips to do this if you don't want to use the tape, if your machine has a problem with gumming up the needle with the tape. Again, I'm on an industrial, so it does not mind double-sided tape at all. Okay, you can actually pull your zipper pulls right out of the way, so they're not going to be in your way. I should have done that beforehand. Just make sure you don't zip them off the end. Okay, and then once that is all on, we're going to take our exterior piece and do the exact same thing, 1 inch end from each end on the right side, and put our tape. Okay, and then what we're going to do now is we are going to stick it to what we just did, but we are going to put our exterior piece right side down. So it'll be the tape, the zipper tape, and our exterior piece will be right sides together, and our lining pieces and our exterior pieces will be sandwiching that zipper tape. So mark your centers, or match up your centers. All right, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to put my zipper foot on, and I'm going to take this to the machine, and with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to start and stop at the line and start and stop at the next line, just like so. So you have those 1 inch sides unsewn. So now you're going to take more double-sided tape and put it on the short ends that have not been sewn. And now what this does is it makes it so we have the ability to make our panels match up exactly. So we're going to be folding it in approximately 1 inch, but it may not be totally. You just want it to make it so our exterior piece and our lining piece, when folded over, are the exact same length. So they match up there. Now the raw edges may not be the same length. That's okay. The whole point of this is to make sure that when we fold it under, that finished edge is exactly the same and match up perfectly, just like that. So you can see my lining piece and my exterior piece are perfectly matched, and the double-sided tape is holding that in place until we can sew it that way. Do the same with the other side. It's just so smart. I really must give kudos to Carissa for showing this way of doing it. It blows my mind because it's just so simple. Good job, Carissa. Carissa is the designer of the pattern, by the way, for Needle and Anchor. Okay, and then we're doing the exact same thing with this side, making sure once we have it folded over that they match up perfectly. Okay, now to finish up the side, I'm going to take more double-sided tape and put it along the seam. Again, you don't have to do this. You can finger press it if you like, or on this side, if it's not wax canvas or vinyl, you could definitely press this. But I'm just going to use double-sided tape. And I'm going to push that seam nice and taut away from the zipper teeth. Flip it over and do the exact same thing with the exterior side. And pull that nice and taut away from the zipper teeth. And your lining piece and your exterior pieces should pretty much match up, which mine do, as you can see. So now I'm going to take this to the machine. We're going to baste along this raw edge and then top stitch up the short sides and along the zipper there. And then you go ahead and do the exact same process with the other side and the other side of the zipper tape. Okay, so this is the panel all done. Everything's matched up nicely. I went ahead and put on my zipper ends as well on each end. Now this panel should measure approximately 11.5 inches. I'm just under 11 3/4, so that is fine. So you can put that aside for now. Now we are going to work on the side panels. So I already went ahead and joined these two together. Again, I'm practicing and then I'm showing because this is my first time making this bag. So take your two exterior panels that are mirrored to one another. And what we're going to do is we are going to connect these two little short edges here. So clip these together. And then you're going to take this to the machine and you're going to stitch that with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then you're going to want to open up your seams like this. So I just used a little bit of double-sided tape to hold those open, and then I went ahead and top stitched this at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to hold those seams open. So this is that piece all done. Now I went ahead and I did the facing here, and I'll show you how I did that. Okay, so you're going to take your facing and your side panel here, and you're going to put them right sides together, and you're going to match up the bottom and this curb and clip them together. I expected this part to be challenging, but it really wasn't at all. I'm not a garment sewer, but I believe this is something that is done in garment sewing quite often. So yeah, if you're a garment sewer, you probably know all about how to do this. Now my cutting is a little bit wonky here, but I can still make it work. My piece is a little bit off on the bottom here, but we're going to be sewing it with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, so it's going to catch that in there no problem. So I'm not too worried about that. Okay, so then you're going to take this to the machine and stitch this all the way around with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so that's done. And now we're going to trim the seam allowance down to about 1/8 of an inch. If you're doing it the dangerous way like me, I'm sure if my mother's watching this, she is cringing right now because yes, I have cut the tip of my finger off with this rotary cutter before. But yeah, anyways, don't do as I do. It might be safer to use scissors, but keep your fingers out of the way if you are using a rotary cutter. And just trim that seam allowance down to 1/8 of an inch. Okay, now this part's a little bit awkward, but it's not hard by any means. So you're going to once again take some more double-sided tape. Again, double-sided tape is a major tool in the construction of this bag. So you're going to go and stick the double-sided tape all around the outside of the facing. And I did it in one continuous piece. It probably would have made a lot more sense just to break it up into little straight pieces, but I think I got lazy and then realized this took more time than it needed to take because I took the lazy approach. So do it in smaller pieces of double-sided tape. Don't do it in one continuous like me. Again, I like to show what I've done wrong so you guys can learn from my mistakes as well. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to press the seam here and move the facing to the back and use the double-sided tape to pull it nice and taut and to hold that seam in place. Now there's that teeny tiny corner right here. You want to make sure that you poke it out just at the bottom here so you have a nice crisp-ish corner like that, and then stick the tape down and then finger press that seam all the way around, pressing that facing flat against the back so they're going wrong sides together. So I'm sure I've made this look a lot more awkward than it actually is. But just take your time and get that seam nice and crisp and flat like so. Poke that corner on the other side out best you can. There we go. And then just press it nice and flat. Make sure it's stuck down really good. And then you're going to take this to the machine and you are going to top stitch around this opening with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now we need to pleat our side contrasting pieces. So you're going to take these 3 lines on the pattern piece and mark them with an invisible pen or a Choco or what have you on the right side at the very top, to give yourself a guide to where you need to make these pleats go. So each of the outside lines we're going to kind of pinch and match it up to the middle line like that. And same with the other side. So you're bringing those lines into the center, making a pleat. and then just go take that to the machine and baste it with a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance and do the exact same thing with the other side contrast. So here we go. I completed the whole side. I did make a mistake. I originally top stitched the facing with 1/8 of an inch, even though I said 1/4 of an inch. So make sure you do it with 1/4 of an inch, not 1/8 of an inch like I did here. Okay, so again, you're going to use more double-sided tape, and you're going to kind of put the double-sided tape along the outside of the facing, the edges of the facing, and this time I am going to do it the easier way and cut up my tape into smaller straight edges. Okay, so the first parts of tape that we want to remove are just the bottom pieces. So just take the paper backing off the double-sided tape off of the bottom pieces. We are going to match up the bottoms first. So you're going to take your side contrast piece and you're going to line up the facing and the other side, and it's going to kind of make it go out diagonal because you want it to be flat, and that's fine. Now the pleat we want to line up with the seam of where we pressed it open. It is going to, you want it to go flat, it is going to go above the facing, and that is okay. Because we want this contrast piece to be flat. So if you flip it over, you can kind of make sure your pleat is centered with that seam there, and mine is. And then you're going to kind of press it flat, take off the tape. Now our contrast piece is going to go past that facing. I originally on the first piece was trying to match that up, and it doesn't work. I was doing it wrong. If I had read the little bubble in the pattern that said that this piece would go past the facing, it would have made my life a lot easier with that first one. But again, that's my fault. I didn't read the pattern properly, and then I figured it out. So you can see here how it kind of skirts out in a way. It's no longer straight, but it kind of goes up. So now you're going to go around here with a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, keeping in mind that I did do this wrong. I did 1/8 of an inch in the beginning, but it should be 1/4 of an inch, then 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to cut the holes for our hidden strap connectors. So you're going to take your template piece and your hidden connector facings, and you're just going to mark this little square. Now this process is very similar to what we do when we do a zipper pocket with the facing. It's just on a much smaller scale. So what you're going to do is on your exterior piece here, you're going to measure in 2 1/4 inches from that center part. So from that left hand side there, and just take some chalk and make a line. And then from the top, you're going to measure down 1 1/4 inches. And we're just making a little corner there so we know where to place our facing. Now we're going to take our facing and put it right into that angle there, right into there. And I'm just going to use some painter's tape to hold that in place. Painter's tape is great because it will not leave any gooey residue on your vinyl when you take it off. Okay, and then we're going to take this to the machine and stitch around this box on all 4 of the connector areas. So I did one already to show you what we are going to do. So now that we have that line drawn, we are sewn. Now we are going to draw our cut lines. Again, it's very, very similar to how we do a zipper pocket with the facing. So I just do little vertical lines from the edge of the stitching that were about 1/8 of an inch, and then I drew a line down the middle in between those marks. And then I drew little V's out to the stitching. And this is going to look very familiar to you once you see what we're doing. Just like that. So it looks like a little mini zipper. Okay, now I'm going to just take my small rotary cutter and just make a little slit here so I can get my scissors in there. And then I'm going to cut to the line and then cut out to the V's without snipping into the stitches that we just made. So this is a little bit tedious, but it's not too bad at all. It's just a very, very small hole that we're doing. It's only 1 inch long. Again, making sure not to cut into your stitching. So that's what we have. Now you can remove the painter's tape. And you're going to push that facing into the wrong side of the panel. So just push it on through the hole. You can see how I did the other side. It's already through the hole. Now we want that seam to lay flat. So from the wrong side, I'm actually just going to take it to the iron and press out those seams very carefully, being careful not to touch the vinyl, but I'm just going to go give it a little bit of steam. Okay, so here we go. You can see how that just helped it lay a little bit flatter. Now we want to secure that, so we're going to take some double-sided tape and we are going to pull that seam nice and tight, similar to like what we did with our zipper panel, but make sure your seam is nice and tight and secure it with the tape, or secure the facing with the tape pulling that seam nice and tight. Do it on the side and the bottom, both sides and the bottom. So this is kind of basting that seam down. But using more double-sided tape. Make sure it's pulled nice and taut, and you can see that just makes it so we have absolutely no raw edges. So go ahead and do the exact same thing with the other side and the other 3. Okay, so I went ahead and I practiced doing 2 hidden connectors so I can show you how this is done. Again, this is my first time making this bag. All right, so you're going to need your connector pieces, you're going to need your rectangular rings, and I always back rivets with scraps of Decovil Heavy, so I have a little bin of scraps, so I'm just pulling those out so I don't forget that I need to do those. And of course, you're going to need your rivets. Okay, so what we want to do is take 1 connector piece, and on the wrong side, we want to mark the middle, which is 2 inches. So I'm just going to take my chalk pen and mark my middle on both of my connectors. Okay, now this is going to be a very tight fit. It is what we want, but it does go in, trust me. So you want to put the connector in through that hole, wrong side up, until the bottom of the connector hole is about 1/8 of an inch away from that line that we drew. So something like this. Like that. And the same with the other side. This is a great way to do hidden connectors. My way that I do them, I can only do them with raw or materials that can have raw edges. You could definitely do this without using a vinyl or a non-fraying fabric. It works really well. Okay, so now we're going to take this to the machine, and on the back side, right along that top there, we are going to stitch it down with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, just like this. Making sure that you don't go past the connector because you don't want that to show on the exterior. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to secure that with the rivet. So just above that line that we just sewn, we're going to install a rivet. Okay, so you can see it's just maybe 1/8 of an inch up from the line we just sewn. I'm going to prep my Decovil Heavy pieces. You can use Peltex for this too. I strongly recommend always backing your rivets with a heavy stabilizer scrap just to give it more security. Okay, so put in your rivet. Put in your scrap of Decovil Heavy or Peltex, and then your cap. Take your rivet press or however you set your rivets and set your rivet. I'm going to do the same with the other side. Just like so. Okay, so now we're going to take a rectangular ring and we're going to put it on our strap, and then we're going to take that end of the strap and we're going to stick it in through that hole again. Again, it's very tight. We want it to be that way, but it does fit, I promise you. And pull it through as far as it'll go. Okay. So it's slightly above there. You can see above the line, just or the hole, because we have a rivet in there. So that gives us the perfect stop. It won't go any further. So it's perfectly placed. We don't have to measure anything. So you can either go ahead and sew along that bottom. I'm just going to place a rivet right along here, right in the center, making sure you're going through both parts of that connector we went through. So you'll have one side that's a little bit longer than the other, but make sure you're going through both of them. Again, don't forget your scrap of Decovil Heavy to secure it even further. Put it through. You can see I'm going through that shorter piece there and the longer piece. And medium rivets worked fine for this. I didn't need a longer rivet. I think there's a 9mm by 8mm post, I believe. And then set that rivet. And it is installed. That is the end of that one. Let's go ahead and do the same with the other side. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to take the two completed panels we've done and put them right sides together. And down one side here, we're going to clip them together. Keeping in mind, this is the part I have chosen to be the front of my bag. Kind of look at where they join, and if you like the way the seams look and everything, to make it the focal point of your bag. So I chose my two best sides here and clip them together. And I'm going to top stitch this with the, or not top stitch, sew this with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then I will press the seams flat with double-sided tape and top stitch down each side like I have done here. Double-sided tape helps a lot keep that seam open. I also went ahead and installed my nameplate. I think I installed this 2.5 inches up from the bottom. Okay, now you're going to fold this into a tube pretty much and match up the other end and clip it together. And we're going to once again take this to the machine and stitch it with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I have pressed my seams open, but I wanted to show you how to top stitch this. It's a little awkward to do it in a tube, but it's not impossible. So it's easier to top stitch from the bottom. So we're going to be, as you can see here, I don't know quite how to explain this. We're top stitching on the right side, but it's kind of with the bag inside out. So you're going to just be pulling it away as you go down each side. This bag is pretty easy because it's a decent sized bag, and it's really easy to move the opposite side of the bag out of the way to top stitch in. You can't really see what I'm doing here, but it kind of gives you an idea of what you will need to do. Make sure not to snag your needle on your vinyl as you're pulling this back out. Okay, so that's one side done. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the other side of that seam. See, not hard at all. Okay, so now we are going to attach the bottom to this tube. So first thing you want to do is mark a 1/2 inch squares in these corners. And the reason we're doing this is because we want to have a nice kind of boxy corner. We are only going to sew in between the 1/2 inch lines. We're going to stop as soon as we hit that 1/2 inch in. You'll see what we mean here shortly. So mark that 1/2 inch square on each corner of the bottom. And then you're also going to need to find the center of the long sides of our bottom. So the way I do that is I just fold it in half and I do a small clip within the seam allowance to mark my center. Okay, so right sides together, you're going to kind of stick the bottom into the bag, and we are going to match that center mark up with the center seam that we just made. And start there and then clip all the way out to the left and right. And once we have that secured, we are going to take it to the machine and we're going to sew in between those 1/2 inch lines with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, trying to stay off of the stabilizer if you can. So put your needle down right at that 1/2 inch mark and do your back stitch and all the way across. Stopping at the next 1/2 inch line and back stitching. Okay, and then you're going to do the same with the other long side of the bag. Match that center, secure it with clips all the way across. And then put needle down at that 1/2 inch mark and sew 3/8 of an inch across. Again, you can see how I went over my stabilizer. Try not to do that if you can. Okay, now we want to do the sides. So a little trick I find that helps that lay flat is just on the exterior piece, not the bottom piece, right where our stitching ended, about a 1/4 inch or so in. I'm just going to do a small clip within the seam allowance, holding the bottom piece out of the way. We only want to be clipping through the main exterior pieces, and do that on both sides. I just find this helps let it lay flat when you want to do the side pieces together. So again, I didn't do it on the bottom piece, just on the exterior piece. And then you will see when you go to put these together, the two side pieces, they lay nice and flat. So go ahead on the side piece and secure it with clips. And then we're going to do the exact same thing. And so with the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance to each of those 1/2 inch marks. Yeah, needle down at that 3/8, at that 1/2 inch mark, and so all the way across the other 1/2 inch mark. This is hard to show. I apologize with my bag up in the air, but you can kind of see how the bag may stand up a little bit when you're doing this, and that is good. That means you got good structure to your bag. Okay, and go ahead and do that with the other short side. And then you're just going to take your scissors. I'll first go in and make sure all your corners feel good from the inside, and then trim your seam allowances down to about a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And it looks like my Fitbit thinks I'm a carrot right now. And then you can turn this exterior piece right side out. Poke out your corners as you go on the bottom. And you'll see how nice and sharp that corner is. And then that's your exterior finished. Okay, so the exterior is done. We can set that aside for now. And now we're going to work on the lining. So I went ahead and did the zipper pocket already. Her way is slightly different than mine. She does it with the facing, but pretty much everything else is almost the same. So I just went ahead and did the zipper pocket. I have my class link down below, how I do my zipper pocket, so you could follow along the pattern to do it her way with the facing if you don't want to have a raw edge. Okay, so now we are going to do our slip pocket. So you're going to take your two slip pocket pieces, put them right sides together. Yes, they are different widths, but that's what's going to help us get a really kind of cool faux border or faux accent border. It's really cool. All right, so clip each of the long ends. And the other side as well. So we are going to form a tube here. And this won't lay flat because the one piece is bigger than the other piece. Okay, and now that that's done, we're going to go down each of these long sides with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So this is what we got. It kind of looks like it can rock. Now turn the tube right side out. Now you can decide which side you want to be your accent and which side you want to be your lining. I actually want to have the black as my accent and still have my pink leopard print here. So you kind of fold it flat like so and make that border as thick as you want it to up top. And then you're going to take it to the iron and give it a good press. And after you've pressed it, you are going to go along the top here and right along here and do 2 lines of top stitching. So it's hard to see because it's on the black, but I do have 2 lines of top stitching here. So take your lining piece that does not have the zipper pocket on it and find the top center of that. Again, I just fold the piece in half and do a small clip within the seam allowance, or you can use a marking pen. And you're going to measure down 4.5 inches from the top. And take your slip pocket and use your ruler as a guide to line it up. Now you're going to see how once you get to the top of the slip pocket it's wider. That's okay, we can trim that off. And then just take some pins and pin it in place. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip this over. After I put a few more pins in, I guess. So flip it over and I'm just going to trim up to match the lining panel here. And then I'm going to take this to the machine. Actually, first we're going to mark our slip pockets. So you want to make a line down the center of the bag using your center snip kind of as a guide. And I'm just going to use my chalk pen here and mark a center. And 2 inches to the left and 2 inches to the right of that center line, I'm going to draw another line, and these are going to be 2 small pen pockets. Sorry for the shaking camera, my table is shaking. And it is attached to my table, so. Okay, so that's going to give us 4 pockets. So then we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to top stitch down the 2 sides and the bottom, not along the top, leave the top open. And then you're going to go up and down these 3 lines. So I've done that. You can see I actually did a little bit of decorative stitching because I wanted to put some decorative rivets there just to help stabilize those pockets a little more. So nothing will, those threads won't snap. Now you're going to take your 2 lining pieces, place them right sides together, and along the side straight edges we're going to clip them together. And the other side too. Now we're not going to worry about the box corners or the bottom for now. We will do that. That'll be the very last step of the bag. Okay, so we're going to stitch down there with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, just like so. So now we want to take our zipper panel and we want it right side up, and we are going to attach it to our lining, which is also right side up. So we'll do one side first, matching up our centers. And we're going to baste these together. It's easier to sew if you undo the zipper as well. So baste that with a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then do the exact same thing on the other side. Okay, so this is what it looks like so far. So you can kind of see what the inside of the bag is going to look like. You have a fully open bottom, which is going to be awesome for turning. Now we want to take our exterior of the bag, put it inside our lining, right sides together. So close to being done. Now these zippers, you want to make sure that they're in between the layers, so they're not caught in the seam allowance, because then they will not function. Okay, and first thing we're going to do is match up our center marks. So I'm using the middle seam there and my center clip on the lining. And put 2 or 3 wonder clips there just to hold it in place. Do the same on the opposite side, matching up that center. So this is with the zipper panel facing down, so it's along the raw edge there. Okay, and then match up these side seams, again, being very aware of where that zipper is, and matching up our center seams here, folding our lining seam open. So I always do the side seams and the front seams first, and then I go ahead and I clip the rest of the raw edges together, distributing the fabric evenly between each of the clips. Okay, I'm just going to reach in here and pull my zipper down so it's out of the way. Okay, so I have it clipped all the way around, so I'm going to take this to the sewing machine from the inside of the bag and sew it together with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So this is all done. Make sure everything on the lining was caught. Double check that your zipper, just put your hand up there, double check your zipper didn't caught in there. And then just on these curvy parts, take your pinking shears and trim away the seam allowances a little bit. Sewing that curve was the hardest part, I think, of the bag, and it really wasn't that hard. It's just a very tight space to get around, especially if you don't have a cylinder arm or a free arm on a machine, which I do not. But take it slow and it's a piece of cake. Okay, and then you can pull it through the fully open bottom, which makes it so easy to pull through, which is nice because sometimes Decovil Lite tends to pull up when you do turning, and this way it doesn't so much. So press out your seams. stuff the lining into the bag. Finger press it all the way around to prepare for top stitching. Finger press around these curvy parts really good. Put in a few clips if you need help to keep it in place. Pulling your lining nice and tight. Okay, and then we're going to go right along here and top stitch with a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance around the curves and back across the top ear. Okay, so I went ahead and I attached my straps. I just riveted them on, folded over about 1.5 inches. And now all we have to do is close up the lining. So what you want to do is open up your zipper pocket and pull out your zipper lining. And remember, we left a hole. We didn't seal up the bottom of our zipper pocket. And this is why. Okay, so once you have your zipper pocket up, you want to reach in and grab the bottom of the lining that is open and pull it up through the zipper pocket. Sewing it this way, we get a seamless line at the bottom of the bag. So the first part we want to sew up, we're not going to do the box corners just yet. We're going to do the straight bottom first. So match up the straight edges of our lining panels. Okay, and then we are going to sew across this straight edge, not the box corners yet, but we're going to sew across this with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Gosh, I just love the look of those handles. And now we're going to box the two corners. So we are going to kind of pull it apart like this, and I'm going to nest those two seams together. And secure them with clips. Same with the other side. Bring the two seams together and nest them together. You could also open up the seams if you wanted to. And then we're going to sew across that with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And the same on the other corner. And then you stuff the lining back inside the bag through the zipper pocket. And as you can tell, you can't even tell there's a hole in the bottom. So now all that's left to do is to top stitch closed the lining pocket. And our edges are already nicely folded over, so there are no raw edges exposed, and we just have to give it a nice even top stitch. And stuff the pocket back in. And we are done. That is all there is to making this bag. What a wonderful pattern. There it is. All right, everybody, so that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Again, thank you, Carissa of Needle and Anchor, for allowing me to do tutorials on your patterns. Again, the pattern is linked below in the description. Yeah, that's it. That's all, folks. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. We are growing fast. The more people that subscribe, the more people can see the tutorials. Anyways, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye.